Welcome to the Flex Forward podcast, where grit meets growth. With your host, Nick Espanet, bringing you stories of resilience, reinvention, and the real climb to success.
All right, everyone, welcome to the Flex Forward podcast. Today, we are joined by Keo Velasquez. Keo is the Director of Corporate Operations at Forefront Living. He has been a chef in his former life, so I can't wait to hear how he's progressed through his career. Keo, welcome to the Flex Forward podcast. We're glad to have you. Can you let our listeners know a little more about what it is you do at Forefront and a little more about you?
Absolutely, and thanks for having me. I've been looking forward to our conversation. So I'm the corporate director of operations for Forefront Living. It's a nonprofit senior living company. In the senior living world, there are for-profits and nonprofits. Nonprofits occupy definitely a smaller space, different business model, and we could have a long conversation about the differences of business models from for-profits to nonprofits. But typically, we operate larger communities with independent living, memory care, and assisted living, and most models have a buy-in versus a rental, which you see a lot in the non-for-profit space. We have a multitude of properties across the Metroplex. Gone through a pretty big growth phase recently, and yes, definitely have had a unique career path to get into where I'm at now. I started off as a cook in kitchens, make my way to a chef, dabbled a little bit in senior living initially as a chef there, kind of fell into that. That's an unusual story. And then I've spent time in hotels and restaurants. I've had a really unique opportunity in my life to do a lot of private caterings with, some are with presidents and very high-end clients. Others are for 17-year-olds' birthdays in a very modest home. And so, those are always fun just to see the looks and the responses of people who get that kind of experience what they wouldn't normally have in their own private home. But yeah, it's been interesting. It's been a really unique journey. I would like to say that it's given me a lot of perspective. I feel that, experience kind of gives you perspective, and perspective gives you resilience in a lot of situations. I try not to fall into the trap of opinion versus perspective. For me, I think perspective is huge. And I imagine you as a podcast host, you see a ton of that,
No, very well said. Just your experience should teach you, because you're going to have good and bad experiences, and how you respond to it means a lot of how life goes on. Because everybody's going to have a challenge at some point in life, and just how we pick yourself up from those challenges means a lot of. I'm going to start on. Give me 1 second though, since I need to put on my do not disturb. There we go. So how we pick ourselves up from challenges is, really determines how we progress on down through life. So that I think that was very well said. So I would imagine in the assisted living or senior living space that there's a lot of competition and different options for seniors or people that are aging. What's something that sets you apart from some of the others out there?
Having the opportunity to work for both a for-profit and a nonprofit, I'm really enjoying my time working with the nonprofit that I'm at now. I mean, they're not all the same, but the ability to create a community and give back to the community. When I left the for-profit world, I was told by one of my directors that, well, we won't get all the nice shiny things that you get in the for-profit world, and I found that to actually be the opposite. The way that it works is there's a reinvestment back into the properties. If it's managed well, and I would say that the company that I work with has done a really, really fantastic job of managing the finances well, and it wasn't always that way. I know that the current leadership there that took over, they took over a troubled company several years back. That needed some assistance, and so they've turned things around, and they've created amazing properties and park-like settings, and that's been our goal as we kind of grow and develop. And we're going through a pretty aggressive growth phase right now. But it's being able to create that set of services and being able to create these amazing experiences for the residents and the families that come and join them. It's interesting. You talk about competition. Yeah, there's a lot of competition, but there's always metrics out there saying that the demand is, because the baby boomers as they age is far out exceeding the supply.
Why?
But that being said, you're starting to see outside forces kind of really kind of come to life in the senior living world. I do a section of our orientation, and I always talk about how it's evolved over the years. These properties used to look like everyone thinks of a nursing home. You walk in
Hmm.
these properties now, they look like these luxury resorts. And I used to work at the Four Seasons before I finally made my final move into senior living. I was there as an executive sous chef, and that property out in Las Colinas, Dallas, it's transitioned over to the Ritz. Well, Four Seasons is still in Dallas. They built a new property, but it's half residential, and it's also half hotel. And if you look at the Ritz Carlton, it also has a huge residential tower, and the W has a huge residential tower. We've had residences from the W and from Ritz Carlton, and they have admitted into our and they've moved into our assisted living. So they're bypassing the independent living piece of our business model entirely, because why wouldn't you live in a hotel? You've got room service, you've got meals, you got housekeeping, and so you're finding these hotels are finding themselves. I don't think they realized they were going to end up in this space, but now they're having to manage demands for private caregivers and the needs of somebody who is aging. And so, yeah, it's you have these two titans of industry starting to kind of overlap and collide.
Interesting. I was in home health for 10 years before I got into commercial real estate, what I'm doing now. But so I saw the variety of a nursing home to some of the higher end assisted living, senior living places that, the meals, nice parks, nice fitness center, pools. It's, they're very nice. There's options that are from the whole gamut. So it was neat to see it progress too in my, 20 years of doing therapy in 10 years of doing home health. But I would go into these places and they're a lot of nice, and I could see them compete like the Ritz Carlton or something that probably very close to similar amenities at some of the nicer ones.
Yeah, the business model of senior living has changed substantially. Well, the first senior living company I worked for was called Classic Residence by Hyatt, and then it rebranded as V when the whole Hyatt family broke up and went public and everything. Um, and that was the first senior living company that I came across that was really trying to incorporate that hotel model, and style of service into these properties. But now that's not new or exciting or innovative. That's just the exception. I mean, expectation that service is really driving service choice. Uh, you know, Everybody kind of thinks about when they think about seniors, like, okay, well, what year were they born, right? Okay, well, they were born in 1930 or 1940, right? Well, that's what we're trying to recreate. And you have to remember that people, what drives their perspective of the world, and people evolve and change, but your heyday is, in your 20s and 30s.
Sure.
That's what you're used to. So when you tack on 20 to 30 years to our residents, these are people that grew up in the 60s. That's a whole different demographic of
Oh
individual.
wow. Yeah. No, that's interesting. I've never thought about, but that's kind of, you want to hit kind of theme from their heyday. That's interesting. And I see that now looking back at some of the places, especially the ones that are done well. I think, yeah, you get that feel, the music, just the music in the hallways and stuff is kind of, it hits their target, their prime of their life area. So that's awesome.
Yeah, we had a resident. They're like, I don't want to listen to this old music. I listen to the Stones and Leonard Skinner.
Yeah, that's your younger crowd that's coming in now. That's
Yeah.
interesting. Very neat. Well, is there something that you have gone through your journey that you found easier that some others may have found challenging?
I think that having been in the hospitality food service industry for as long as I was, it really kind of grants you that ability to create a customer interface. You're dealing with families and residents, especially in your assisted living and memory care settings, and they're going through a challenging time,
Hmm.
at times, and you don't necessarily know what they're dealing with, and so you're having people that may be struggling both socially and cognitively, and it's frustrating for them. And so being able to provide that service and connect with them on a level and not take it personally, if they're having a tough day, and being able to interface with families and be honest with them. I've found in my hospitality journey that honesty and being straightforward sometimes was a really more appreciated approach when it came
Sure.
to our interactions. You can go in and I'm so sorry and apologize and that leads you to sometimes it's a positive outcome, but it's really more about taking the time to listen and understand. We teach what's called a hostility curve, and it's not that is always right, but it's more about the customer as the customer and how can we find a solution to the problem, and empathy and really kind of listening to what their need is more important.
That's awesome. And listening, I think communication and listening and relationship so important in almost every walk of life, every industry you're in. If you're dealing with customers, is so important because sometimes they may be really frustrated and may or may not have a legitimate gripe, but listening to them and then trying to come to an agreement is so important.
Yeah, when I talk to my incoming new orientees, we talk a lot about engagement and what it truly means to give somebody your attention and engage them. I always give the example of small children. If you truly get down on a child's level that you may have just met and you engage with them, and I don't mean you're just kind of playing with them and you're really like you're engaging with them one on one. There is that sense of that child will come find you if they see you again because you've given them that attention and that engagement. It's not it doesn't have to be, 3 hours of your time. It's, that interaction. And so when we talk about, engaging with our seniors, they're looking for that engagement. They're looking for that conversation where, you've kind of silenced all the other buzzing things. You're on your not on your phone anymore and you're buzzing through the community trying to figure something out. And you're like, hey, tell me a little bit about what's going on in your life and really kind of have that engaging conversation.
That's awesome. So if someone's listening and wants to get better at something, say, in their career or self-improvement, do you have any suggestions, any podcasts, books, anything that you've done to help with your through your path?
I've read a few different books that have really kind of been helpful. I've had some great leadership trainings. I always encourage people to if they get a chance to go to a leadership conference and take advantage of it, take down notes. There'll be good and bad things. You don't want to take everything out of it. I wrote an article on a variety of topics, and one of the things we covered was advice. And you have to understand that people are more than willing to give you their advice.
Yeah.
But typically their advice and it comes from a good place, but their advice is rooted in a place of this is how I experienced it, or this is what I would do in your scenario, maybe not having had that experience. And so understand that advice is what it is. Take it for the advice. Look at the good and bad of it, and see how you can apply it to your situation. With what comes to leadership, there's a book out there called the 1 Minute Monkey Manager, and it's a great book. It talks about not taking on all of the problems and issues of your management staff. It's about holding them, accountable without being overbearing and helping them find solutions, but not necessarily saying, "Yeah, I'll take care of that." Because as soon as you say, "Okay, I got it," the monkey, as they kind of put out there, the monkey jumps from their back to your back, and now they're checking in on you. Hey, how are we doing with that? Have you had any movement with that? And so now you've taken on this monkey that is now bouncing around your office. And it's more about returning the monkey to where it belongs, helping them, figure it out, and growing them. And so those things make huge, huge difference. Stephen Covey's or Covey, depending on who you talk to, the 7 Minute Manager and the 3 Habits. Those are always great books. They have just that base that you have to go back to. I had a friend who was French. And he had a saying, and I asked him what it meant, and he was like, it roughly translates to what's done does not have to be done. He goes, it means that if you wait till it needs to be done, it's too late. There's always going to be something that comes up that's going to interrupt you. And he goes, if you can get it done when it doesn't have to be done, then you won't be running around. You won't be stressed out because it's already in place. And then you can tweak or modify or adjust if things need to.
That's awesome. And this may be similar, that 80-20 rule. I've had a friend talk to me about there may be something you're worried because you're not perfect at it, but if you can do it and you get 80% of it correct, you're 80% there. And then at that point, you kind of reassess. And then if you get another 80% of the last 20%, then you're, I think, 96% of your goal. And so it's talking about getting started and getting going. Even if you don't have it all figured out, or you don't have 100% perfect plan, get 80% of it correct, and then after that you can get 80% of the next 20%. It's kind of maybe along the same lines of addressing it before it's at the last minute. Or not.
Yeah, I'd have to agree with that. It does. It really does make a big difference. I was having a conversation with my son recently about, because he is in a multitude of things as a young man is, and I saw a video about how the gentleman was talking about how he goes, there's going to come a point when the thing that you love to do no longer is fun, and you no longer find joy in it. And he goes, and that's really at the point where a lot of people give up. But you have to get through that because the joy no longer comes from just doing said thing. The joy comes from the accolades you get for being as good as you are at it. And so if you can continue to do it and you go from great to, or good to great, then that's when you get the accolades, and that's where your joy comes from. You have to learn that it's a significant shift in how perspective. And it kind of goes back to perspective.
Yeah, no, it circles back around. That's a good way to close the circle. So, what's one of the biggest challenges you've had to overcome in your career journey?
It's being put in situations where, I showed good skill and capability. When I made the transition from food service back to senior living at an assisted living building, this was their flagship building. It was going to be this very high-end luxury brand. They really wanted to go over the top of this building. And so what I didn't know at the time was I was the experiment, and they were going to have a director of hospitality, which I thought was a food and beverage director. But it turns out that included the valets and the drivers and the concierge, and eventually the spa because I didn't know what to do with it, got lumped under that umbrella. And so I was managing a food service operation plus all these additional services. And a year into it, the census wasn't where it needed to be with the building. There had been a lot of challenges getting started up, and the owner group was not happy with the management company. And so they then transitioned to a new ownership group or new management company. And so they pulled the executive director out of the building about a month out. Guy flies in, sits me down, and we were short staffed a day. I'm in a chef coat. I've got a dirty apron because I just got through lunch service. And he says, our executive director won't be coming back. We're going to have you sit in the position. You really know the ins and outs of this building. You've been here the longest. And I'm sitting there looking at him. He's like, are you sure about this? It'll be a good feather in your cap. He's selling me on it. And about an hour and a half later, he pulls all the directors together. And the guy in the chef coat and the dirty apron is now running the building. And so, I dove into it and realized it was more about operations, which, as you get to an executive chef level, really, you're not doing a whole lot of cooking. You rarely pick up a knife. You're more about the operations of the
Organization and keeping
especially at the hotel when I was
directing traffic.
Yeah. And so we transitioned companies, and and the directors were kind enough to believe in me and support me. I had some amazing people behind me. And that was kind of the fall area of 2019. A couple months in, we're getting close to 2020, and I look at talking to my regional. I'm like, hey, I'm still doing the job. Have we found somebody yet? Like, what's the plan for me? And he's like, well, do you want the job? I was like, well, at first I was terrified, but I think I got this. And he's like, all right, well, then you need to apply. And so I end up applying, and I get, finally I get promoted to the executive director. And this is like January-ish of 2020.
Right before COVID.
And so I'm now the executive director of a fairly large assisted living building. It's this high-end luxury brand in a very wealthy part of Dallas. And COVID happens 2 months later, and we lock the doors basically. And so I would say that process, it was probably one of the most challenging times in my life to go through and manage all that. And I'd recently divorced, and so it was kind of everything that could compound at that point was compounding. It was a unique period, but we got through it, and I had an amazing team.
That's awesome. And in a team, yeah, that was extremely interesting period of time going through. I was still doing some home health, transitioning into my commercial real estate world, so had a kind of a foot in both doors. But yeah, remember I actually I was actually going to Dallas at that time from Fort Worth doing my home health because there was no traffic. And
yeah, it was amazing. You could shoot down the.
I had my something to show I was doing healthcare, and so I could do whatever speed down the highway and get to Dallas almost as fast as I could. Prior, in the past, I would have just stuck in Fort Worth because travel time is not you're not productive time. So, but people, they were calling, asking us to go to Dallas because there weren't as many therapists getting out at that time. So,
Yeah.
it's an interesting time.
Yeah,
But
it was interesting because there was so many regulations and rules being thrown around. There was so much, that didn't match up. It was yes this one week, no this the other week, and so you didn't know which rule to follow or which thing you couldn't do, and you got yourself in really unique, difficult situations when it came to loved ones and family members. We had to be very creative, and there were some really tough situations, when it came to people. We were lucky we didn't lose that many residents to COVID, but we did lose a few. And those situations, we're talking husbands and wives that have been together for 50 years.
yeah,
And they want to be together if one is passing away and you're being told not to. And so there got to be a point where you just kind of had to do what was right versus
yeah,
what was easy. Which is easy is just to say we're going to follow this set of rules and regulations that have been given to us because there's another set over here that says something else, but we're going to go with this one. And that one I think was probably one of the biggest lessons I had to learn after we went through some really tough situations and people they have a right to make their own choices.
yeah, yeah. If somebody wants to go be with their loved one, even if it exposes them to potentially getting they
Yeah.
should be able to. That I bet you guys had a lot of tough conversations and through that period. Well, good for you guys for doing the thing that's right. Well, as things, it's a lot of people as they start doing well in business, a lot of executives start looking towards the future and considering passive income to create to either enhance or replace their income. Have you ever do you have any thoughts on passive income?
I think that I don't think anything's passive. Any business owner you've ever talked to, I think you can get it to a point where it becomes more of a passive income stream. But any influencer or anyone that really is very transparent and honest, they'll tell you that there was a lot of work to put in before it became a passive income. It goes back to the plumber that comes out to fix something at your house. And they came out and they got it done in 2 hours. And the guy's like, "Well, why'd you charge me so much?" He goes, "Because he's one of my best, and he's very fast and he's very efficient." And he goes, "Well, this is ridiculous." Okay, well, next time I'll send out the guy that's going to take 6 hours and may not do it right. It's like, and so you have to get that to that level of knowledge and expertise for things to be smooth and easy before
Sure.
it just suddenly falls. And I'm certain there are certain streams of income that people started and like, oh wow, it was way easier than I expected it, and it's just kind of money's flowing in. But you might as well have gotten a lottery ticket at that point. Those are unique situations.
Sure. Yeah, that's they hit that lottery ticket. So as for wrapping up the interview, do you have any exciting plans or initiatives you're kicking off in the next 6 to 12 months?
We're opening up a new property in San Antonio. It's going to be our first property outside the Metroplex, and so that is, we're really looking forward to that. And we started a whole business line of private caregiving service within our buildings, and it's been doing much better than expected. So I'm excited to see that. And really, we're trying to shift our focus to that wellness. We're seeing a lot of in this industry, a lot of push towards wellness. People are picking up weights now. They're not doing treadmills. They're not doing, spins. The seniors are now picking up weights and they're working out. Now doing other things too. But there's a lot of innovations in the health and fitness. And I'm a health advocate myself, and so that part's really exciting for me to see.
That's awesome, and it's neat to see because I read there's a book Outlive by Peter Attia, which is interesting on longevity in life, but it talks about carrying weights are more important
Yeah.
or better for your longevity over cardiovascular stuff. And he talks about rucking or carrying a heavy kettlebell for a mile or some kind of a big heavy weight. So that's interesting that it's making it into the senior community also.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, there's a lot of research in this area, but there is definitely a lot of evidence supporting and pointing towards, quad strength is directly indicative of, your quality of life and lifespan, and along with grip strength. I mean, you can't get up and move,
Well, the challenge, I'm in my mid 50s, so I'm really started focusing on it. I'm like, hey, because it's almost like your bank account gets overdrawn with your muscle. if you're in your 50s, 60s, 70s, it gets harder to start at. It's not impossible, but
Yeah.
you need to start filling up your muscle bank account
Yeah,
earlier.
exactly. Yeah.
To get it done. So that's been a neat journey. Says, yeah, I've got slowly worked up to a heavier and heavier kettlebell to do a 1 mile walk around my neighborhood.
It makes a difference
without setting the kettlebell. So you can change hands, but you don't set it down for the whole mile. So that's been fun. It's getting expensive because I keep peeking out at the one.
You keep getting
better. So I've actually got a 5-pound sandbag hooked onto it now. Instead of buying another going up 5 pounds, I'm going to keep putting little sandbags onto the kettlebell, and then eventually I'll buy another big one. It's great.
I had a personal record, and I've done bench press on and off throughout my life, and I just got under my bench press in my garage, which I occasionally do. I really go to a gym workout, and I was like, well, that's going up a lot easier than I expected. I called my neighbor over. I'm like, I don't want to crush myself.
Definitely get a spotter.
Yeah, so he spotted me, and it was surreal because I wasn't in a position where I had been trying or working towards it. I had just been working out more consistently, and I put up a weight that I'd never even come close to or seen before. I just kind of sat there. He's like, "You good?" I was like, this is so surreal for me because I haven't been working towards this. It just happened.
Well, that I had similar. I've been going through, and at the end of the gym, I do the assisted pull-up thing in the gym that offsets my weight. But then another workout group I work out with in the mornings, they had a thing, and I ended up doing 3 pull-ups. I'm like, I haven't done a pull-up in 20 years, but I did 3.
Right.
And yeah. Like, wow, that's awesome. Then I see Kennedy, RFK, something the other day, he did 20, and he's 71. I'm like, oh man, I'm really lacking. He's knocking out 20 pull-ups. Yeah, I know it's still getting there, but yeah, that guy's incredible to see somebody in their 70s.
It is. It's inspiring too.
Yeah, no, for sure. Well, Keo, it's so great to talk with you today, and thank you so much for your time and sharing your tips and your insights with us. If people would like to get in touch with you, what's the best way they can go about that?
I would probably I'd give out my email address if that's okay with you.
Yeah,
just an email address that they can reach out to me.
Yeah,
and say, hey, I'd love to talk with you, or I have more questions or something like that.
Sure. You can say it if you like.
Oh, okay. Yeah. It's just KEO at LAGATIA.com.
Awesome. Great. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. And listeners, remember to like and share this episode and keep tuning in.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Flex Forward podcast. If you've got grit, growth, and a great story, visit flexforwardpodcast.com/guest to apply and join us on the show.